Hello and welcome to Shoot the Hostage. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Dan.
We're a movie show that delves into a different film each week based around a theme. This season, the theme is cops. Like all good podcasts, this show contains explicit language and mature content, as well as major spoilers for the movie that we're covering. So this week, we are talking about one of your favourite films, Bad Boys.
Yes. Yeah, giving the game away there a little bit. Came out in 1995.
It did.
And it was directed by Michael Bay.
Do you know, I didn't realise it was his first.
Yeah. Straight off the back of music videos.
Yeah.
For music people.
For music people, yes.
Yeah.
But colloquially known as musicians, I believe.
I believe that's the term, yeah.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I didn't know that he came from a music video background.
How could you not know?
I don't know an awful lot about Michael Bay.
Every one of his movies looks like a music video.
Well, yeah, it makes sense now that I have that information. But I'm going to be honest straight out of the gate and just say I'm not very familiar with his work. I would go as far as to say I've sort of avoided a lot of it intentionally. I'm far more familiar with like the first half of his back catalogue than I am the latter half. I hate Transformers.
Yeah.
There we go. I've said it.
Yeah, that's fair. Oh, well, if we're talking about Michael Bay pictures, then obviously this one was his first.
Yep.
And we'll get into Bad Boys.
Mm-hmm.
Followed this up with The Rock.
Yep.
Which is one of the greatest action movies ever made.
Okay. Yep.
Objectively.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing. You don't need to justify yourself to me.
And then after that, it was Armageddon, which was a huge success.
You love that.
I do.
Animal
it's
crackers.
Cheesy as fuck. Animal cracker scene can get fucked. I saw Armageddon 4 times at the cinema.
That's insane. How old were you?
14.
14. Okay.
Yeah, when that came out.
Do you still enjoy it as much? Would you go and see it 4 times now?
I wouldn't go to see it 4 times now, but I've watched it a lot more since the cinema.
Okay.
Yeah, I still enjoy it. It's a good old time.
Okay.
After that was Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Which people do not like.
I don't think Michael Bay was the man for a historical epic.
It's a tone-deaf movie, isn't it?
It's massively
It's
tone-deaf.
like, why are you getting we'll get into it, but the king of stylized action movies to make
a war
about
film.
history where like real people died.
Yeah.
It's not the greatest, is it?
It's not the move, no.
No. And then we get into shit like The Island, which I didn't care for. And you mentioned Transformers.
I haven't seen The Island.
That's rubbish.
Okay. I'll continue to avoid it.
And then you get into 17 Transformers movies. I enjoyed
Only 17.
Only 17. I enjoyed the first one when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of them are just unwatchable.
I think I've only seen 2 and I hated the first. I have the same criticism about that as I do about things like Pacific Rim, in that you can't see what's going on. Too much shaky cam, too much close up.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what I want from an action film.
My biggest problem with Pacific Rim is that the word rim is in the title, but there's no actual rimming in the movie.
There isn't. That's your complaint.
But I like the movie.
More rimming.
Yeah. So Transformers, like the first one, the rest of them are garbage. 13 Hours is not a bad movie. That's pretty good.
13
I've only
hours.
seen it once, but I enjoyed that.
I'm not familiar with that at all, which shocks me.
All right. Jim from the Office. Is it Jim or Tim? Jim?
From the Office?
From the American Office, yeah.
John Krasinski?
Yes.
Jim,
right. So Jim from The Office plays a super hard soldier, and they've got to get in this building, I think, in 13 hours. I think.
How have I never seen that? I find him very likeable.
It's all right, actually. It's not a bad film.
Okay.
It's quite enjoyable. Maybe we'll watch it one day.
All right.
Pain
and Gain. You missed Pain and Gain. I haven't seen that either.
Yeah, not great. It's Mark Wahlberg in it, so
Ugh.
Yeah, exactly. But you do get to balance that out with Anthony Mackie.
Who is excellent in fucking everything.
In everything, yeah. But then it goes back down again because The Rock's in it. Six Underground, which was, I don't even know what that movie was or what it was trying to be.
I think Michael Bay knew what that movie was.
No.
Ryan Reynolds certainly didn't.
Skateboard rocket launchers? I don't know.
You remember far more about it than I do.
And that kid from EastEnders. His latest film at time of recording is Ambulance, which we watched a few months ago.
Yeah, and shockingly, I got more out of that than you did.
You enjoyed it more. It gave me a headache.
Yeah, I can see that.
Way too many drones. There was some really cool stuff in it, but it just went over the top with it, and I think that's just Michael Bay all over. Mm-hmm. I find that his earlier work is much better because I feel like maybe he was restrained somewhat, whether that be by budget.
Which is wild that Bad Boys is restrained.
Bad Boys is really restrained, yeah. And that's it. That takes us up to the end of not the end of his career. No.
We can hope
he's still going, and they're still making bank. Apparently, I think his movies, so he's going to continue to make them.
Oh, fair play to him. So before we dive fully into the nonsense that is Bad Boys, do you have a synopsis for us?
Yeah, I do. So the tagline is "What you gonna do?" because bad boys, what you gonna do?
Yeah.
Synopsis: Marcus Burnett is a henpecked family man. What does that mean? What does henpecked mean?
He got sexism because his wife is a nag.
A big old naggy wife. Can't do police work. So he's henpecked. Yeah, this movie's not aged brilliantly.
In many respects.
In many ways. We'll get into it. Marcus Burnett is a henpecked family man.
Yep.
Mike Lowry is a footloose and fancy-free ladies' man.
Yeah, we don't see a great deal of him ladies manning, but it is implied.
There is some ladies manning what was cut out, apparently, as well. There was some ladies manning where he woke up in a bed with, can you believe it, twins. Lose your mind, twins! He's such a ladies' man.
It's Michael Bay, I can definitely believe that, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just amazed it wasn't triplets.
Yeah. Where were we? So Lowry is a footloose and fancy-free ladies' man, apparently. Both are Miami policemen, and both have 72 hours to reclaim a consignment of drugs stolen from under their station's nose. To complicate matters, in order to get the assistance of the sole witness to a murder, they have to pretend to be each other for some reason.
Yeah, I don't really understand why they weren't. I mean, I get that she was resistant. We'll get to this.
Okay.
Alternative synopsis: two giant idiots lock into some mediocre police work.
Mediocre?
Save the day.
I think you're being way overkind if you're saying mediocre.
I said they looked into it.
Yeah, they did.
It wasn't active.
Okay, so there's a synopsis. So yeah, they've got to track down some stolen drugs. It's heroin, just so you know.
Okay.
And they were stolen from the old bills, the police station. Shouldn't use colloquial terms, really, should I?
Dibble shack.
What's that?
Dibble.
Dibble.
Is that a northern thing?
I think
Maybe
so.
Maybe dibble's a northern thing.
Yes. So that's the very first scene is Mike and Marcus in the 911 doing some back and forth dialogue, quick, snappy, you're a bellend. No, you're a bellend.
Yeah.
Why are you dropping a chip in my car? You've got no respect for my property, blah, 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 blah,
That's
blah.
exactly how it played out.
Pretty much.
That was filmed after the fact.
That was a reshoot.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were four scenes, apparently. That was a reshoot. The Porsche was Michael Bay's own Porsche.
Of course it was.
Of course it was, because they couldn't afford to get any more cars. We didn't mention the budget, which was 20 million, and it grossed 141 million worldwide. Wow. So things like using your own car is necessary. But yeah, opening scene. So they're having a bit of back and forth, and then they get Kim Coates arrives and tries to steal their car. And I will say,
somebody from Sons of Anarchy.
Apparently he was in Sons of Anarchy. I know him from Waterworld as the guy that says,
God.
paper,
yeah,
with paper.
Yeah, which you warned me that you would quote far more often than has actually happened.
Well, it's coming to fruition now.
Yeah.
And he tries to buy a child. Anyway, moving on. Bad Boys.
Let's just gloss over that, shall we?
So this is the opening scene, and as we said, it's a reshoot. And I think it's a really, really good scene because
okay,
hear me out.
Justify.
It it just tells you what movie you're watching, and I appreciate that in a silly action movie. And it is nonsense, and we'll get into it, but it shows you that, look, sit down, guys. We're going to do some sunsets. We're going to do some snappy dialogue. We're going to use the words fuck and bitch on repeat constantly.
Yeah.
And we're just going to have a good old time and just dig each other out a bit. Plus, we're going to have some sexy ladies. Because
oh, yes, there was a sexy lady as a decoy. As a distraction.
Yeah, as a distraction from and it works.
It does. They're giant idiots.
Yeah. They tried to get carjacked. Or they need to get carjacked, and they do a little argument, which is kind of their shtick. It puts off the baddies, and then they punch them, bosh, and then they stop the crime from happening.
They do. They stop a crime.
Yeah, and I think
the mediocre police work.
Mediocre script.
Oh, incredibly! But wasn't a ton of it. I mean, I feel like I read somewhere that Michael Bay kind of went on record to say that he thought the script was garbage, which is why there was so much ad-libbing.
Yeah, let's just repeat that statement. Michael Bay said that the script was garbage, so Lord only knows.
Has the original script ever been released? Because I would pay money to read it.
Do you know anything about the original intention of this movie?
Very little.
Okay, so let's do a little bit on that then. So originally was conceived, it was going to be a Disney production.
Fuck.
Can you believe? Yeah. And it was going to star SNL alumni.
Oh, yeah. No, I did read something about this. So I read originally that the leads were intended for Eddie Murphy and Wesley Snipes, but then I read elsewhere that it was supposed to be for John Lovitz and Dana Carvey, which would have been the most different vibe.
I like to think it was meant to be John Lovitz's character from The Wedding Singer.
He's losing his mind.
And I'm reaping all the benefits. I think the Eddie Murphy thing came after. I think originally it was going to be a Disney production.
That would make sense.
Dana Carvey, John Lovitz. Working title was Bulletproof Hearts, which is a hot, steaming pile of shit.
Terrible.
It's terrible. Apparently...
Isn't there already, there's more than one film called Bulletproof at this point as well?
Yeah, well, you've got the... Isn't that the one with Gary Busey?
Bulletproof. I don't know. I'm thinking of something different.
There's an Adam Sandler one.
Yeah, Adam Sandler. And maybe a Wayans?
There's definitely a Wayans in it.
Yeah.
And then I think Sony procured the rights.
Right.
And it went on. And then maybe when that's when the Eddie Murphy thing was, and Wesley Snipes thing was being shopped around.
That would make a lot more sense.
Eventually they cast Martin Lawrence, who was a big deal back then, who knew. And he brought on, or encouraged the team to bring on Will Smith.
Okay.
Which is funny because when I saw this, I have a clue, for the first time, I have a clue who Martin Lawrence was. But I knew all about Will Smith because of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So he was very much the lead, in my opinion. But first build in 1995, Band Boys, was Martin Lawrence.
How things change.
Yeah.
Martin Lawrence never slapped anybody at an award show that I'm aware of.
No, I don't think so.
Maybe he should have Will Smith's career.
He tried to. He did that movie Blue Streak, which I quite liked, and Big Mama's House. Maybe there were 3 of those movies.
Big Mama's House. Jesus Christ.
I don't think I've seen one, but I've seen a trailer, which was enough for me.
I think that's something I've intentionally pushed to the back of the recesses of my mind.
It looks terrible.
Yeah.
So we've done the opening scene.
It's interesting that you say the opening scene is so great, because the first note I wrote was, I hate all of these people. Everyone. Criminals, cops, everybody involved. Yeah. I hate them.
The criminals were bad. The script was bad. Kim Coates says, I'm a stand-up comedian and I suck. That's why I need your car.
Right.
And it was just really? That. I feel like that line was just said so that Mike Lowry can punch him and go, tell me another joke, bitch. I believe that's how it went.
I want to know what lines are the remnants of the hot garbage script and what exactly was ad-libbed.
I think it's quite easy to tell. I think anything with Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, there's probably an 80% chance that it was ad-libbed.
Right.
And then there's a couple of other scenes that are ad-libbed. And then I feel like, and it depends how you're interpreting the term ad-libbed as well, because I feel like a lot of it would have been Michael Bay just before they shout action, going to TLO, the only saying, why don't you say this? Or why don't you say that? Is that ad-libbed? Not in the true sense of the word. I guess
more of a collaborative as you go effort.
I think that's mostly how this movie was shot.
Yeah.
But after we get the intro to Martin Lawrence and Will Smith, we get the drug heist, which I think is a very cool scene.
Yeah.
I think it's done well enough for the budget. There's a lot of close-ups. It's shot in the darkness. You can't see a lot of the set, but I think it's done well enough. They shoot a policeman or a criminal dressed as a policeman, and he falls out of the truck, which was a practical stunt. Stuntman jumping out of the van at 25-30 miles an hour with a wooden plank attached to his chest or back. I forget which. I think it was his chest, because I remember watching the movie and thinking, that shirt's too big for him. But I think it was just a big old lump of plywood that was underneath his shirt. But yeah, real practical effect. And that's when they steal the heroin from the police station that's got one security guard scratching his nose. And for some reason, they've got a ventilation shaft that can fit entire human beings through. It's not the greatest design, but I did appreciate, and I've never noticed it before, that Mike Lowry, Will Smith's character, actually comments on that. He actually goes,
does he?
This is a very intelligent design. Yeah, I like this. When pointing to the ventilation shaft that they crawled through.
Well, that must have been something that was added after the
I
fact.
think so. Yeah, they were like, this is nonsense. Well, what if we comment on it? Yeah, we can do a meta thing. Blah, blah, blah. So that's the setup in the movie. Stolen drugs. They've got to get the drugs back, and they're super cool and not misogynistic at all.
Even the women are misogynists in this film.
Yeah.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. So they've got to find the drugs.
Yeah.
The drugs have been taken by Checky Carrier.
Yeah, because presumably Peter Stormare was unavailable.
Peter Stormare is in Bad Boys 2.
Of course he is. Whenever it calls for a vaguely European bad guy, he's top of the list.
This was slightly before Peter Stormare's time, I feel like. So at this time, if you wanted a criminal that was European, then you got Checky Carrier.
Right.
For show. And I thought he did a good enough job with, a horrible script. I thought he was menacing enough. He's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
He looks the part. He's quite gruff and aggressive, and I think he did well enough.
I think he's kind of... do you know what? I'm going to go ahead and say I think he was sort of underused.
Definitely.
I know it's not about him. He's not one of the bad boys. He's a bad boy.
He's a bad boy, but he's not the titular bad boy.
No.
/S.
So I understand why we don't spend a lot of time with the criminals, but I think maybe that was a mistake. I would have liked to see more of the opposite side.
Yes, no, I agree. And he was the only... I would hesitate to use the word interesting. He was very one note, but he had something because of the way that he delivered his dialogue, I think. But his henchmen were just terrible. Yeah. Awful.
Especially the really New York looking old school mafia guy. Yeah. Who definitely must have ad-libbed his lines because they were tremendously awful.
I think some of it, yeah. I think in order to be in Fouché's gang, the first question was, are you a misogynist? And it was first tick box, yes. Great, you've got the job.
So that's the same questionnaire that they issue to potential police recruits as well?
I think so.
Presumably.
Yeah, I think so. So they've got the drugs. Eddie Dominguez, ex-policeman, has done a little inside job because it's the 90s and it's a police movie, so there's got to be an inside man.
Yeah.
He decides to have a little party and he steals some heroin and employs a sex worker.
Who happens to know
Mike Lowry. Yes, Max is her name. And she has a mate, what is called Julie.
Who is
Julie
very much not up for it.
Yeah, she's not up, and rightly so.
Yeah.
Tia Leone in this movie. Definitely the first film I would have seen Tia Leone in.
Have you ever seen a film, I think it was called Flirting with Disaster?
No.
Which I believe was late 90s, around about the time she married Duchovny.
Right.
And I just remember, that was my, probably the first thing I ever saw her in. And I just remember thinking, I don't really get it. I don't get it. Why is she in this role?
Yeah.
Rewatching this, I get it.
Okay.
She's hot. I didn't get it, now I get it. And she was pretty good in this, actually.
Do you know what? I think she elevates this movie. I think her character has equally really good dialogue, given the premise and the world that we're in.
Comparatively good dialogue.
That's it, yeah. Comparatively good dialogue and equally comparatively terrible dialogue.
But she has dogs, which makes up for it.
She has dogs, yeah.
And she, I assume, going off the dialogue, is probably a vegetarian?
Yes, I believe so. And that scene was ad-libbed. as well.
Okay.
The bologna scene you're talking
Something
about.
like that, yeah. When she's talking about what goes into the meat, and it's just, never been so happy to be vegan.
So she's at this party with Max. Max gets murdered unceremoniously by Fouché. Julie happens to be in the bathroom at the time, and cue little foot chase through the Al Capone suite in this building, and she jumps off the roof into the swimming pool, and she gets away.
Which was like kind of a boss move, but also she's terrible at hiding. Throughout the film, there are so many instances where she could have just remained safe by hiding.
Yeah.
And she's not good at that.
No, she's not great. No.
But thankfully she is at least tough to back it up.
Yeah. So she gets away. She is aware that Max is friends. I feel like this is way too complicated, this plot for this movie.
Oh,
but
100%.
I'm just trying to set this up.
Some of the stuff you've said, I'm just like, I've clearly forgotten in the space of the couple of days between watching it and recording.
Luckily, I've seen this movie 37 times.
This year.
Yeah. She gets away. She calls the police precinct to speak to Mike Lowry only because Max trusts Mike Lowry.
Mm-hmm.
She's aware that the police are involved as an inside man somehow, so she's very adamant, I can only speak to Mike Lowry. Joey Pants picks up the phone.
Yeah.
Captain Howard, who is, I think, the standout in this movie. I think he's fucking great in this film. I think he's great. He knows exactly what movie he's in. He's the stressed out captain, ridiculous dialogue, but like he's like 60 seconds away from an aneurysm at all times.
Which is the appropriate kind of blood pressure level for a cop.
I
would assume.
I feel like just before every scene, he's just having a quick conversation with Michael Bay, and he's getting so amped up by his dialogue with him. So anyway, Captain Howard picks up the phone. Mike Lowry's out investigating, so he's not available to talk. Marcus Burnett is. So Captain Howard says, Marcus, you must pretend to be Mike. I don't give a shit. You've got to pretend to be him. So he does, and he goes and meets Julie, and then
some wacky miscommunications ensue.
Yeah, like we're doing kind of a body swap but not thing in this movie.
That would have been far too complicated an element for this movie.
Yeah. So she's a witness. She's in protective custody. They've got to protect her, and then she's helping with the investigation to find the bad guys. And that is everything that you need to know about this overly convoluted plot. But I feel like the setup, mostly everything works in this movie for me because it's funny. A lot of it makes me laugh. It's not the best. Some of it is quite bad in terms of, well, it's a 90s movie. It's of its time. But I feel like the magic is in their back and forth, though.
What do you think is the most 90s thing about this film? I know it's a tough call. I know what I think it is.
I don't know. I'd say pick anything from this movie, and it's very
I'm going to
nice.
go ahead and say, I mean, the fashions, obviously. Marge Helgenberger's hair, what the fuck? It looked like it was constructed in the Jim Henson studio for a start.
Oh, is that the...
Rod Stewart.
Okay, yeah. Internal Affairs.
And she was terrible.
She got that right, detective. Yeah, she says things like that.
She's awful.
Yeah.
Which, considering she
great.
went on to have, like, a multi-decade career in CSI.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, did she?
Yeah.
Okay.
So...
I haven't seen her before.
Only does police
or
work,
after Bad Boys.
apparently.
Okay. Yeah, that was a needless kind of plot thing where the Internal Affairs are coming in and saying, we're gonna shut you down in 3 days. It's like, yeah, but the drug deal was going down in 4 days. So like, we've already got our ticking clock.
Yeah.
Why do we need this
We
also?
didn't. It was just a completely unnecessary plot point and character.
It was weird. You could have cut that out and it wouldn't have made a slightest bit of difference, and maybe had a bit more time with the bad guys.
Yeah, which I would have vastly preferred.
Yeah.
And I think in a film this dumb, it's not a good move to overcomplicate things.
No, it's not.
It's so needlessly convoluted.
Yes.
But yeah, the soundtrack is like the most 90s thing that I've ever seen outside of Hackers.
Who have you got in the soundtrack? I've got a little something for you. And I give you just 3 guesses to figure out just what it is. It's a great soundtrack. I love this. I had this on cassette.
Of course you did.
Yeah, and I think they had the Mark Mancina score on it, I think. But like a limited version of it. And the score, actually, while we're talking about the soundtrack, the score for me is one of the all-time greats, and I love it.
It's better than it has any right to be for this film.
It totally elevates it for me.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I think I'd only seen Bad Boys once, probably back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Or early 2000s, prior to watching it again for this show.
Yeah.
But I recognised the music. So although I am loath to heap praise on Bad Boys, I'm inclined to agree that it's very memorable.
It is. And, well, obviously you've got the theme tune to Cups, haven't you? Cups.
Yeah, which...
Bad Boys!
I'm not a fan of that.
What you want to do?
I think... Do you know what one of my pet peeves is? I think when they shoehorn in music that echoes the title or the themes of the film, I find that to be a hack move.
No, yeah, that's a fair comment.
It's a personal grievance.
Okay. I give this one a pass because I think the tune is such a banger.
Fair
Almost
enough.
ruined by that quote unquote reality TV show Cops, which was everywhere in the 90s for some reason.
Yeah.
Yes, soundtrack really, really good, I think, but definitely of its time. Where are we with the plot? So they've got to find the drugs, and they're doing detective work. They've got informants. Jojo the Thai guy. They go and ask him a few questions. They take a trip up to high society.
They do.
I'm stopping myself from quoting this film because I tell you, like, I rented this, I guess in 95 or 96 when it was released on VHS. I rented this. I did a double feature. I did this with Dumb and Dumber, and I was sick at the time. I remember it quite clearly. I watched
a result of these films?
No, I was already sick. And I watched Dumb and Dumber. I was a bit underwhelmed by it, which completely changed on rewatches, and it's one of my favourite movies.
Classic.
Yeah. But I was underwhelmed with it at the time, but I put that down to being ill. And I watched this after, and I loved it immediately. Rewound it and watched it again. Bought it on VHS, I think, a couple of weeks later, and then just watched it on repeat.
Wow. So how many of those, 37 viewings, which I'm assuming is a guesstimate, how many of those were in the first couple of years? The bulk of them?
Definitely the bulk of them. Yes.
But it's one you return to regularly, is it?
I probably watch it... in the last 5 years, I've probably watched it 4 times, I would say.
Wow. Almost once a year?
Yeah. It's almost a once a year for me.
This is your Empire Records.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so. I enjoy it. It's a comfort movie for me.
Okay.
But yes, so back to the plot. So we haven't really done any action stuff yet.
Oh, we'll get to the action stuff.
Okay.
Interestingly, after watching Hard Boiled a couple of weeks ago, there's some stuff I want to talk about.
Okay. So they're trying to solve the case. They go to a nightclub called Club Hell, which is a terrible name for a club, isn't it? I feel like that was improvised.
Club Hell, it's boring.
Yeah.
There was, I guess, Manchester's equivalent was an alternative club called Satan's Hollow.
Okay.
Which is way more imaginative.
Yeah.
Go for something like that. Club Hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the most 90s thing in this.
Yeah, I guess so. But they're going to Club Hell to find Fouché and the gang, and they stumble upon a truck full of ether.
Oh, yeah.
Well, after they've had a fight in the bathroom, actually, Marcus Burnett gets...
Well, Julie almost gets them in the shit again. She was just told to stay put.
Yeah.
But she's terrible at hiding.
Yeah, she wants a bit of revenge, so she goes to try and find Fouché and shoot him. This is at Club Hell, but they manage to avoid that, or they push the gun out of the way, and then they have a bit of a fight in the bathroom. Someone gets their head jammed onto urinal that's full of piss.
Oh, and then that was the most disgusting thing in this entire film.
Which was real piss. That was Michael Bay's actual piss.
How do you know that? That's not real. That's not an actual fact.
It was on the commentary.
You're spreading misinformation.
But they have to escape because they're just outnumbered, I think, or and some other reason. Because they need a car chase, that's why. And they get in this truck that just happens to be full of explosives, ether. But they explain it because they're going to cut the heroin with ether because it quadruples the value, apparently.
Is that true?
Yes, I believe so.
Really?
Or I think so. I don't know. I'd have to look it up. But
I have very limited knowledge on heroin, thankfully.
Yeah.
So I'll have to trust you. Not that you have much more, we should state.
Let's move on. So they've got a truck full of ether that's just hanging up in barrels. And they're getting chased by the bad guys. So Mike Lowry sort of throwing barrels of ether out and shooting guns at them, and they explode. And you've got explodey things happening on the roads.
Is that where the phrase disappeared into the ether comes from? Is that what they mean? Something's in a barrel?
You think that phrase was originated in Bad Boys 1995?
I think this is where it originated.
Yeah, probably right. So action scene. Quite enjoyed this action scene, this chase.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad.
Yeah, it was pretty good. And they total the truck. At this point, Marcus's wife thinks that he's on holiday in Cleveland or some police thing. Because he has to lie.
That apparently I wasn't paying attention to.
Because he has to lie. Because it's the 90s, you've got to lie to your wife, haven't you? What else are you going to do?
Has that changed? I think that would probably happen now.
It's probably quite modern, actually, when you think about it.
How do you feel about the look of this film?
It looks all right. I mean, it's a Michael Bay movie. It looks like every other Michael Bay movie, but it was the first to do it. So I quite like it.
In terms of the colour grading, like, this is the most orange and teal I've ever seen outside of a Soderbergh movie or Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
The most orange and teal.
Mm.
Like, some of it looked like it'd been filmed on Mars.
Yeah.
It was insane. Everything's got to be either bright blue skies or a sunset.
Yeah.
No in between.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I found that to match the tone of the film.
Well, it was shot based in Miami, so I guess that it's sunny there, isn't it?
They weren't sweaty enough for it to be believable Miami for me.
Okay.
I've seen Dexter. Also, the Miami PD is far goofier than Dexter led me to believe. So you said earlier that the first scene involving Marcus and Mike. Am I getting the names out right? You may have to correct me at some point.
No, you're right.
Bad Boys, expert over there. So you talked about the fact that you thought that opening scene was really good in terms of, I guess, laying down who these people are, the tone of the movie, what we're likely to be in for.
Yeah.
Which I agree with to a certain point, but I don't think it told us very much about them as people. As cops, yes. As people, no.
Okay.
Do you disagree with that?
I do disagree.
Okay.
Because Mike Lowry's got a sweet Porsche. And Marcus Burnett doesn't have a sweet Porsche. Yeah.
Because on account of him being henpecked. I assume.
Yeah, she just wouldn't let him get the sweet Porsche. I think it tells you everything that you need to know about these characters.
Okay. Which is that they're
very little.
About as shallow as a paddling pool.
Yeah. I think it tells you everything you need to know.
I didn't find either of them to be very likeable at all, which I imagine was not the desired effect. Because I don't know, I remember thinking like about 20 minutes in that I felt like I still didn't know anything about either of them, other than that they were both arseholes in different ways.
Okay. So Mike Lowry always wanted to be a cop.
Right.
He's the first one at the crime scene, and he's the last one to leave the crime scene.
Okay. I'll be happy to be proven wrong.
But his family was left money, and what's he supposed to apologise for his family leaving him money? And the other cops resent him, but he's a super cop. And Marcus Burnett used to have an afro, and
oh yeah,
and they're mates. We saw that photograph album, so that added some layers to the Marcus Burnett character.
Added some absolutely. The characterization is like an onion. You're correct.
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
I feel like, I mean, what you think? I think about Die Hard. What did we know about John McClane in Die Hard? He
likes vests.
Doesn't like planes, which is a big problem for Die Hard 2. Yeah, I feel like you get enough for a silly action movie. You don't need much more. We're not talking about Heat here, you know.
No, I know the plot was so convoluted that it didn't really leave a lot of breathing room for more intense characterization, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I'm not saying mine is a valid complaint, but I still feel like I don't know a great deal about those characters. They felt quite two-dimensional.
Okay.
Which, again, is fine for a film like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Some of the stuff, we talked a little bit, and I don't want to harp on about misogyny every week. I don't want to be the podcast's fun sponge. But there was some stuff in this that kind of stood out to me that I hated, which I guess goes some way to explaining why I didn't like the characters very much.
Yeah.
Because obviously Mike is very much just thinks of himself as a bit of a smooth ladies' man. And
it comes up several times that, even Julie says, I thought you was meant to be the smooth one, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I have like a full body reaction to people who are that overconfident. And it's not a positive one.
Yeah.
So that always rubs me up the wrong way. But even the scenes where we see Marcus with his wife and his kids, like some of the stuff he says to his wife, it seems like a very traditional sort of almost 50s American white picket fence idea of a family.
Yeah, but the synopsis tells you that, doesn't it? As well, it's the
picked up by hens.
Henpicked, yeah.
Henpecked.
I mean, that's...
Oh, God. I've said it too many times. None of it sounds correct anymore.
It's, well, I've said it a few times. It's dated. It is dated, for sure. Yeah, you're right.
Some of the stuff, like the interactions he has with his wife and some of the stuff where he's sort of trying to talk her into bed before he goes to work and says, I think, I'm a better cop if I get some in the morning. Which is like the most coercive piece of shit thing to say to your other half.
Yeah, you better give me a hand job or else some innocent person's going to get gatted.
I hated that.
Yeah.
And yes, it was the 90s, so I'm not gonna go on about it too much. I can forgive stuff like that in a film like this. Because this is a film where you can fucking smell the testosterone.
It's all about machismo. It's. I'm not defending it. It is a terrible.
But you're allowed to.
It doesn't affect the enjoyment for me. Yeah. But mostly, I think, because of the age I was when I saw it.
Yeah.
I still feel like that kid when I'm watching it. It's an emotional response. Like objectively, I watch this, and actually, like, when you're watching something, you've got to try and remain as objective as possible when you're going to talk about it on a podcast. So there, I can watch it and go, "Ooh, that's not good," or "This is bad," but my emotional response is still, "This is a cool movie."
But that's totally valid, though. Yeah. But yeah, and there was another moment as well where I think it was aimed at Julie, and I cannot remember which one of them said it to her, but they were just like, "Oh my God, calm down." It's like, she's fucking calm, my dude. What are you talking about?
Wasn't it Marcus Burnett that shouted, "Calm down"?
Yeah. It's like,
you're being hysterical.
You're the one who needs to get some therapy and a blood pressure check, my guy.
Yeah.
She's all right, given the circumstances.
And I wouldn't have blamed her for being hysterical. Her mate got murdered. She damn near got her ass blown off. Mm-hmm. And also...
she keeps losing at hide and seek.
She keeps getting handcuffed to steering wheels.
But she was smart enough to find a workaround to that.
Which doesn't work. But we'll get to that.
There's so much stuff that doesn't make sense in this.
But I would have forgiven Tia Leone for actually being hysterical, because at one point she actually got hit in the head with a AK-47.
Holy shit.
Yeah, apparently went, her legs went completely over her head. She was just off her mark.
So
apparently.
She didn't just get, it wasn't like a little tap. That sounds like she was decked if her legs went over her head.
Yeah, the stunt guy accidentally got her in the head. She was off her mark and she rolled over. And apparently Michael Bay was super upset and said, "Oh no, what if she can't finish the movie?" And she was
that's his first thought.
She was very upset by that, understandably so. But yeah, so she had a bit of a rough time making this, I think.
Okay.
I can understand why Tia Leone didn't come back, but I do feel like she elevated this film. I thought she was pretty good in this, and some of her dialogue. We briefed on touched on briefly earlier the bit where she's doing the trying to identify the criminals with Martin Lawrence, mm-hmm. and she's explaining to him that his bologna sandwich is made that used to have a face. And,
yeah.
My bologna had a first name, and that was all ad-libbed.
Okay.
That was all ad-libbed. And that was really good. That was maybe my favourite interaction between those two.
Yeah.
In this movie.
I think because Michael Bay's films are so loud and bright and kind of bombastic, you don't often see those quieter moments
Yes.
where the characters are sort of given a chance to get to know each other and shine a little bit.
To be characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's to the detriment of his films.
Yeah. Agreed.
I think he's the one that needs to calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
And just allow that sort of stuff to breathe.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I feel like that's why things like Bad Boys and The Rock work better than his later movies, because you take 6 Underground and it's just 2.5 hours of explosions, and you're just like, what's going on? Who's that guy?
Somebody hopping around on scaffolding or whatever the fuck was
Plus,
going on.
Dave Franco gets a scaffold through the chest or something in that movie. I don't know.
I don't remember that at all.
But yeah, the quieter moments in his earlier work, when you've got the talent, they work pretty well.
Yeah.
The bit that didn't work pretty well, and unfortunately was also ad-libbed, where Julie and Marcus are in the apartment, and she notices that he's got pictures of Mike, because it's his apartment, all over the apartment, and she says, I thought maybe, I don't know how to say this, I don't want to offend you, I thought maybe you were gay. And that's like the worst thing that you could ever say to Marcus Burnett. I mean, it's just terrible, isn't it? Like, why would you accuse someone of being gay? Isn't that awful?
Especially when they're already so henpecked.
Yeah, I'm not gay. And he's like, oh, didn't you feel that bump in the bed? That's where I get down. But as you quite rightly pointed out, like gay people have sex in beds also.
Exactly. That doesn't prove a thing.
No.
There would be thrusting in both scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking... Anyway, the point is that is possibly one of the parts that's aged the worst. I don't care for that dialogue at all.
Well, it just harks back to a time where we were on playgrounds and kids would throw around gay as an insult.
Exactly. It feels like an 8-year-old has written that.
Gay.
Oh, you're gay, are you? Yeah.
It's not an insult.
No, it's horrible. And it's played for laughs, and it's just totally... It's possibly my least favourite part of this movie. It's just not necessary.
It is. It's a bit of a low blow.
It's a
like if that's the only way you can think of to make your characters funny, then work on that a little bit more, perhaps.
Yeah, totally agree.
I did read some stuff that was interesting in terms of lines that were added into the script after the fact. Because at the beginning,
what, ADR?
No. I mean, sort of. Well, it sounds like the script was heavily modified from its original iteration.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot of that, as we've discussed, was due to kind of it being a piece of hot shit and Bay kind of conferring with the actors and ad-libbing, workshopping, that sort of thing. And there's a bit at the start where Marcus talks about the franchise Denny's. Now, we don't have Denny's in the UK, so I don't know a great deal about that as a whole. But I can't remember the exact line, but he says something about he didn't want to go there because he doesn't like the way that we've been treated.
Right.
And apparently that's connected to the fact that in the 90s, the chain Denny's settled several lawsuits alleging that staff had been racist to customers.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, sick burn Denny's.
So they're trying
but also, I kind of respect including that.
They're trying to do some social commentary in Bad Boys.
In Bad Boys, believe it or not. It's there if you look for it.
Okay, that's interesting. I know the line you're talking about.
Okay.
I did not know that was what that was in reference to. And actually later on in the movie, which is another bit of improvisation, and maybe the standout line is where they go into the shop.
Oh, the convenience store.
The convenience store, yeah.
Which is funny because I'm not very familiar with this at all. And I know there were a couple of moments where we were watching it and you were like, oh, iconic shot coming up.
Yeah.
But to me, the scene in the convenience store is probably one of the most famous.
Yeah, definitely. Back up, put the gun down and get me a pack of tropical fruit Bubblicious.
Yeah.
And some Skittles.
Yes.
Yeah. Improvised. And it works. They've got that wide lens where you get both of them in shot pointing the guns at the camera.
Yeah.
Totally works. And it's a brilliant scene.
It is a good shot.
It's a good shot. I'll give him that. It's a good scene. He knows what he's doing with the camera. I would say that they... way too many edits, way too many cuts, obviously, but he knows how to shoot.
That was one of the first notes that I actually made, was just, oh my God, there are so many cuts. Yeah. I feel like I'm going mad.
Yeah. And I feel like Michael Bay is probably single-handedly responsible for many, many, many garbage action sequences that we got for the next 20 years. And I feel like we're only starting to come away from that now with the John Wicks, and we're trying to make more of a focus back on
so you think
practical
people were trying
takes.
To mimic what Bay had popularised, do you think?
I think it's probably more of a logistical thing. I think it's probably just cheaper to shoot any old shit and then cut around it, and then you can just do some close-ups and shake the camera a bit, do constant cuts, and you can hide a lot by doing that. So you don't necessarily need to pay for actors to do martial arts training or get super martial arts experts in. Or stunt doubles that even look a bit like them. It's probably a cost-saving exercise. Partly, some of it is probably aesthetic. It's just, that's what Michael Bay does. That's what works, blah, blah, blah. But I feel like most of it is probably a money thing. Things like Taken, when you've got Liam Neeson, is he going around kicking Russians in the head? No, he's not. They just cut him and it looks like he is if you squint your eyes. But I feel like Bay is responsible for that. Yeah. And it probably came out of necessity initially because, this movie was made for 20 million, which blows my mind.
That does seem low.
It's insane.
Having read some of the trivia about cost-saving exercises, like you talked about, they used his Porsche in the scene. They, I believe he funded the finale himself because the studio wouldn't give them any additional money.
God, what? I mean, how does this movie end if they don't?
I don't know.
Does this movie just end in Mike's apartment then?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, maybe.
I guess so.
It needs that action scene. It needs it.
Otherwise, there is no climax.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. He dropped some of his salary to help pay for that final action scene. Mm-hmm. But I feel like for 20 million, bear in mind, last week we spoke about all 7 police academies. Police Academy 4 cost 17 million.
Which is crazy.
3 million less than Bad Boys.
In what, 87, 88?
Yeah, nearly a decade before this.
Crazy.
So it's a hell of an achievement to have made this for 20. I feel like there was going to be a lot of people that were overworked and underpaid. So it's not great.
No, especially in terms of like the practical stuff and the stunts and the explosions. Like that on paper should have cost far more, surely.
Yeah.
Obviously, they again saved a lot of money on script rewrites by just getting the actors
by not
to
having
do it.
a writer.
Yeah. By just having it be an organic process.
Yeah. They probably didn't spend that much on cast. Martin Lawrence, I think, was a big name at the time. Like I said, I wasn't aware, but he was probably looking for a big role. Mm-hmm. Will Smith was coming off the back of Fresh Prince, and I believe he'd done Made in America at that point as a side character.
Oh, wow, yeah. Okay.
So this was his first big role.
Yeah.
He probably didn't cost that much at that point,
mm-hmm.
Relatively speaking. Tia Leone came over to LA in 1988 for a Charlie's Angels reboot, which never happened.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not aware of that.
You wouldn't be, because it didn't happen.
Okay.
But she came over in 88 with the intention of shooting the remake, reboot, whatever you want to call it, and she got paid $80,000, and it never went ahead. So she got paid $80,000 to not do anything, and to this day she says it's the best job she's ever had.
Oh, I like her. The more I hear about her.
She's great, honestly. So you're not spending that much on cast. It's all set pieces.
Yeah. No cast costs, no script costs.
Maybe Joey Pants was the best paid actor in this movie.
You reckon?
Maybe. He's a character actor, so, he did the Matrix a couple of years after this, but
yeah,
I suppose he's just getting started doing his Joey Pants stuff, isn't it, at this point?
Just the fact that you're affectionately calling him Joey Pants tickles me.
Joey Pants has been around forever, but I'm talking about like modern day legendary Joey Pants.
Yeah.
Like that, you've got Bad Boys, you've got Bound, you've got The Matrix,
mm-hmm.
and that's when you really start getting Joey Pants.
Please stop saying it.
Memento. He's very Joey Pants in that.
Damn. I need to rewatch Memento.
I like that movie, but I don't remember that much about it.
I knew you were going to make that joke. I knew it. You beat me to it.
Yeah, so 20 million blows my mind that they made this movie for that. The Bad Boys 2 was a completely different story. That cost 140 million.
What? I haven't seen the second one.
It's dreadful.
And that was 2003. So that was nearly a whole decade later, which was kind of a long time to wait for a sequel back then.
Huge amount of time, because this was very successful, this film. It made $40 million at the worldwide box office. So you would think there would be straight on a sequel. But I do think, obviously, you've got Bad Boys 95, Will Smith, huge breakout star after this movie, and Fresh Prince, and obviously he had the music career, didn't he?
He was too busy
getting jiggy with it.
Yeah. And saving the White House.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because the year after he does Independence Day, and then he's just, hitting the stratosphere. And then he's got Men in Black, and I feel like he's too busy in that period. Michael Bay? Hello? No, I can't do Bad Boys 2. Why? Wild Wild West. Wild Wild West, that's what we're doing.
That was the smart choice.
Big
clearly.
mistake. Big mistake. But I feel like he's too busy, and that's probably why.
Maybe it was just like, but they're going to allow me to do a song.
Yeah. Wild Wild.
Oh, no.
So they wait nearly a full decade for Bad Boys 2, and this came out in 95, Bad Boys 2 in 2003. It's just when the internet's starting to get going, so I'm on Google every day trying to figure out when Bad Boys 2 is coming out. So I'm super excited for Bad Boys 2, and then I watch it, and it was nonsense.
Which, do you know what? I am actually intrigued to see it. I think I would like to watch 2 and 3 now, because although I have a lot of criticism for the first film, I still think I gave it a 3 out of 5.
I'm surprised.
I know you are, yeah. But it is a very entertaining film.
Yeah.
I will give it its due. It's pretty pacey.
Yeah.
It doesn't drag
at
any point.
Yeah.
And for a 2-hour film, normally in a 2-hour action film, you'd expect loads of exposition stuffed in just to pad out the running time.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that was the case here. I think there was some extraneous plot points that could have been trimmed.
Yeah.
But none of it dragged. I wasn't bored. The action was really well done, I thought, for the most part.
Yeah.
Exhilarating. Nonsensical, but exhilarating.
Yeah. It was just a bunch of cool shots, cool looking shots. Will Smith's got a shotgun and he's going to say sup to somebody before shooting them, and then their body just flies 1,000 yards across the airport hangar.
There were a few moments in the second half where I audibly laughed.
Yeah.
Like bodies being catapulted through the air.
Yeah. You forgot your boarding pass. The New York bad guy, henchman guy gets shotgunned in the chest and gets blown onto. Yeah, because if you fall onto an electrical
any sort of
cabinet,
circuit board,
it just immediately electrocutes you.
That's scientifically sound.
That doesn't seem safe.
Yeah, I don't think that's at the top of their list of concerns at that point. We should probably get a safety check here, lads.
Yeah, but super pacey. I feel like Bad Boys 2 was way too bloated.
Okay.
Bad Boys, and I hated it. I hated Bad Boys 2. I think it's a terrible movie.
This is his shortest film.
I'm
Did
not
you know
surprised.
That? And well, as of 2020, I don't know. I don't know the running time of Ambulance. It felt longer.
Yeah, Ambulance was longer, I think.
Okay.
Pearl Harbor was 4 days long.
Yeah.
Transformers are a full month each. Yeah,
it certainly feels that way.
But that's why I say it feels like Bay kind of restricted, and he was, because he only had 20 million, so he was quite limited in what he could shoot. And now they're just like, Michael Bay have all of the money and he shoots whatever he wants.
But I find this is often the way with directors. I mean, look at people like Peter Jackson, for example. It's a real testament to the phrase, necessity is the mother of invention. If you're cash strapped, you have to find interesting workarounds, and it often results in a far more interesting film, I think, final product. And like you say, he's reached such a point in his career where people just toss money at him.
Yeah.
Or he can fund it himself.
Yeah.
Is it Platinum Dunes? That's his company?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, so he does produce as well. But yeah, so he doesn't need to go begging to a studio anymore. He can just fund whatever he wants. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing.
It's definitely not a good thing. And, his earlier work, Bad Boys and The Rock specifically, Bad Boys being his first film, he gets recruited by Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer, who are legends in the action genre. At this point they'd done Top Gun, Days of Thunder, Crimson Tide might have been after this movie, but huge legends, and I love a lot of their movies. So I would imagine that they were looking over his shoulder for a lot of it, for Bad Boys and The Rock. But by the time you get to Armageddon, which I think is still a Jerry Bruckheimer production, but they probably gave him a lot more leeway, and then his filmography goes on, and like you say, he's just given carte blanche, and I think that's a terrible, terrible thing.
Yeah, especially for somebody like him with his sort of sensibilities and just absolute teenage boy mentality. It's too much.
I kind of put him in a similar realm to Zack Snyder, in that Michael Bay makes really nice looking movies. There's some really good camera work, some really good looking explosions. Zack Snyder's films, for the most part, look stunning. He knows how to make a picture look good.
But that's about it.
But that's it. Like,
with the
story,
exception of the Dawn of the Dead remake, which
was written by James Gunn.
Excellent. Well, yeah,
so
it shows.
But that's what I mean. So you get the visual flair of Zack Snyder and the storytelling prowess of James Gunn, and you get a really good movie.
Yeah.
But that's how it should be. But you become so successful that you don't take any advice from anybody. You just get a bunch of yes people surrounding you, I guess, and you end up with 600 grand.
That would explain 600 grand.
Yeah.
Certainly. So what do you think would improve Michael Bay's films? Just smaller budgets?
Smaller budgets.
Somebody to rein him in a bit?
Yeah. I think it's quite simple. I think you need to cut his budgets in half and give him a good script that he has no influence over. Yeah. None. Just, in fact, just make Michael Bay second unit director.
Yeah.
Just get him to do all the second unit action stuff.
He can order the drones, and that's about it.
No. And you've got a drone limit, by the way. You've got a limit of 3 drone shots in the entire movie. But what he would end up doing is shooting the entire movie on a drone.
You say that, but I loved some of the really dynamic drone stuff in Ambulance.
So did I. When it got to the 73rd drone shot, I was just over it.
Yeah.
There was some really cool stuff, like with drones going under cars, and I've never seen drones utilised that well. They just did it too much.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And it just got boring.
Yeah, that's fair. Too much of a good thing.
Too much of a good thing. You haven't seen Bad Boys 2 or Bad Boys 3.
Or 3, yeah.
I would say I'm kind of interested to give Bad Boys 2 another go. I think...
But it's funny, I remember you saying a while back that you hated it.
Yeah.
And I think I looked it up on Letterboxd. And actually people speak quite highly of it.
Okay.
And it has a pretty much equal average to the first movie.
Nick Frost and Simon Pegg are obviously a fan.
Yeah.
You haven't seen Bad Boys 2? Yeah, I don't care for it. I was, what I was saying earlier, I was super excited to watch it. I'm very disappointed when I did watch it.
Okay. How many times have you seen it since?
I think at most twice.
Oh, right.
At most.
But you did give it a second shot.
I think, maybe not. But I think so. I definitely watched it when it came out, and then I hated it. And I thought some years later, let's give it another go. And I'm pretty sure I still hated it.
Okay.
But that is like way over a decade ago now. So I would kind of be interested in giving it another go.
People change, Dan.
People change.
Maybe you'd love it now.
Maybe I've matured. And maybe Bad Boys 2 I now understand.
You just weren't on the same level as Bad Boys 2.
I think they hide drugs in corpses in that movie.
Okay, interesting.
And for some reason, they destroy all the favela housing.
Lovely.
Yeah, isn't that nice?
Okay.
Thank you, Michael Bay. But then Bad Boys 3 brings it back, and I really enjoyed Bad Boys 3. I think it's a return to form for sure. Wasn't directed by Michael Bay.
Yeah, I saw that was absent from his CV.
But you can tell that they have a love for the franchise, the directors.
Who did direct it?
I knew you was going to ask me.
Sorry, putting you on the spot now.
Yeah, I don't know. Let me get on to... Can you feel a little bit when I get onto Letterboxd?
I'd be interested to know how much input Michael Bay had in the third one, if any, or if he just kind of sold the rights to the property and let somebody else have a stab at it.
I don't know, well, Sony, I reckon, own the rights. Has Bay got any influence?
The first two were both Sony, were they?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're still owned by Sony, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So the directors of Bad Boys for Life were Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah.
Okay.
What are they known for? Let's have a look now. Oh, Bad Boys 4.
They did such a good job with 3.
Yeah, which is still happening.
Okay.
I'm not familiar with any of their
with the same cast, because Will Smith's kind of unpopular right now, isn't he?
He is. Yes, he's somewhat unpopular.
He's not quite managed a redemption tour just yet.
No, but they're still making it.
Okay.
They've announced that they're still making it,
mm-hmm.
and they should, because Bad Boys 3 was a big success as well. And It was really good. You can tell that they had a love for the franchise, and they brought back the score for the original. They took that Mark Mancina score, and Lorne Balfe repurposed
Your
it.
favourite.
One of my favourites. Yeah, Lorne Balfe is a brilliant composer, and done some really good scores. So they bring him in, and he repurposes the original score, which just probably is half of the reason why I love this first movie so much. Is that soundtrack. It's better than it has any right being, and definitely elevates it. I think it makes it feel more like prestige cinema, whereas actually it's the movie itself is more B-movie cinema.
Yeah, the content of it for sure.
Yes.
I mean, it's got a lot in common with a lot of this sort of shitty 80s action movies that we enjoy. Yeah. In terms of tropes and plot beats.
Yeah, you know, Wisecracking Cop, Beverly Hills Cop.
But you're right, the score does sort of give it an edge, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at a point where I'm ready to start wrapping that up now. But there is something I want to talk about before we do. And that is to, as I said earlier, kind of tie it back to Hard Boiled, to our first show.
Yeah.
Because on the commentary track for this film, apparently Michael Bay implores fans not to think he steals from John Woo. Which methinks thou dost protest
the
too
lady
much,
does
sir.
protest too much, yeah. I was thinking.
Yeah, the shootout scene at the hotel was filmed before the director ever saw a John Woo film. Or admitted to having seen a John Woo film. I mean, even just the double wielding of the guns is straight out of something like Hard Boiled, right? Which John Woo popularised.
But there's even a slow motion Flappy Bird in one of the shots.
Yeah.
I feel like...
So, like, one or the other could be an accident.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
He's lying.
You're going to play devil's advocate. He's the devil.
Yeah. No, okay, no, seriously, devil's advocate. Maybe he hadn't seen... I would be amazed if he hadn't watched Hard Boiled.
Yeah.
He's an action movie director.
Yeah.
Like... Firstly, why are you not watching Hard Boiled? Because if you want to do great action, you need to know what the current language of action cinema is, right?
So that, I mean, more than anything, so that you don't accidentally plagiarise somebody.
But maybe he hadn't seen Hard Boiled, but he would have been aware of it in the zeitgeist. And he would have. Because watching this, I'd never thought about it, but clearly he was influenced by John Woo.
Yeah,
clearly.
I thought about it several times.
Yeah.
And I know that's only because it was on my mind from a couple of weeks prior.
Yeah.
But still, it seemed pretty blatant to me. But obviously context is missing from that quote. We don't know if maybe he felt the need to defend himself because he's been asked that question so many times. But if he was saying it apropos of nothing, that screams guilt to me.
Yeah. It's like, why? Like, I didn't even ask you this.
Yeah.
What was the question? The question was like, are you happy to have rapped on Bad Boys? He was like, I didn't steal anything from John Woo. What do you mean? Michael, I didn't ask you that.
Yeah, but I didn't. Yeah, we'll never know.
Yeah.
We'll never know. But we know.
So you gave this movie a 3.
I gave it a 3 out of 5,
I was really shocked because I thought you hated this while we were watching it.
I rolled my eyes many times.
You did.
Yeah.
But there was a couple of points as well when you're like going on your phone and stuff. I was like, oh, you hate this, don't you?
Well, no, I was going on my phone to look things up.
Right.
I'm a proper film watcher. I don't go on my phone.
Okay. Which is why I was surprised.
Yeah.
Which is why I thought you hated it.
No, I was looking things up. But yeah, there's stuff in it that I hate.
Yeah,
for sure. There's stuff in it I find problematic, stuff that probably wouldn't fly today or shouldn't.
Yeah.
But like I've said, it's pretty by the numbers in terms of plot, but it's entertaining.
Yeah.
And that's all it needs to be.
Yeah.
So I have no real grievance with this film. I would watch it again.
Yeah.
It's daft.
It's a lot of fun with some problems. It's got some issues. It's really dated. If you'd have seen it like I did when I was 13 years old and you are a fan of action movies, the 90s action movies, then you'll have a really good time. And like I said earlier, it just makes me feel 13 years old again. Because I know,
hits you right in the nostalgia.
I know the script. I used to be able to recite this script word for word with my mates.
I'm not sure that's something I would admit to.
Not now. Like, I've been resisting the urge to say a bunch of lines, but I go to say them like, no, you can't say that. Yeah, I have a lot of fun with this. It's one of my favourite movies. It's in my top 20 movies of all
I
time.
thought you were going to say top 10 then. I thought you were going to
It's
say
not
it
quite.
cracked the ubiquitous top 10.
No, it's not quite top 10 because I can watch it and objectively it's not great, but it's pretty good. It's a pretty good action film.
I mean, look, what you enjoy about a film is completely subjective. We're not here to say this is good, this is bad. These are just our opinions.
And I score films subjectively.
Yeah.
Because I go on Letterboxd, I give this a 4.5 out of 5.
which is...
I know. But The Rock, I love The Rock. I think it's great and objectively a way better movie than Bad Boys. But I give that a 4.
Okay, just because it's not as personally enjoyable.
I love it. It's just not as personally enjoyable. Yeah, I think that's right. It hasn't quite got that magic that this film has, and I think that magic comes from Will Smith and Martin Lawrence and their back and forth. And I was a huge Fresh Prince of Bel-Air fan when I was a kid, and Will Smith was like, maybe not so much these days, but as a young impressionable teenager, he was kind of my hero.
He was pretty cool.
He was very cool.
Yeah,
he was very cool. And I don't like Chris Rock either, so.
So you're still of that opinion?
I'm going to be the first to say I'm Team Will Smith.
Okay. Controversial. That's a good place to end it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for listening. If you've enjoyed the show, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on your platform of choice and come and shoot the shit with us on social media. All the links are in the description.